So tonight is Rosh Chodesh Tevet, and it's the new month, and it's the tribe of Dan, which is an interesting tribe to study because the tribe of Dan kind of disappears. And we'll talk about that tonight. Oh.
I just had a revelation that I don't want to share with the congregation.
Okay. And the other thing is tonight I'm going to talk, you know how at Passover, there's the original Passover and then there's a second chance Passover? Did you know there's actually a second chance Hanukkah? I will talk about that tonight. It's kind of one of those things that nobody really knows about, but it's a different type of Hanukkah. And it'll be fun. I'm hoping to be able to talk about that tonight. The thing is, I have to try to comprehend it enough to where I can explain it simply enough that, you know, sometimes I get it and I don't quite figure out how to explain it.
Yeah, I get that.
One of the pitfalls of being a teacher. You study this stuff and sometimes you can figure out how to explain it and sometimes you can't. And anyway, come on in.
You what now? What?
Can I get you to fill out one of those yellow papers that has a mailing address? Because I have your mother's name and mailing address, but I don't necessarily have yours. And I don't know if it's the same or not. And did you know that we met your sister in Phoenix?
No. That's crazy.
It is crazy. We went to this church in Phoenix that one of our friends, that a kid I grew up with, and my best friend growing up, Barbara, is his wife. So Dan and Barbara lead this little Baptist congregation in Phoenix. And so we went there on Sunday, and this girl comes running over. I can't believe you're here. I know you're from, and I'm like, it's Callie.
You saw it on the Facebook or something?
No,
She's been here to visit.
they came here several times when she lived here, and then she got married and moved away, and I lost track of her. But it was kind of interesting. She comes running to give me this big hug, and I'm like, who is this person? I didn't recognize her. She has grown up into a beautiful, beautiful young woman.
Wow.
And
That's really cool.
so anyway, that was interesting.
Well, at least you still look the same, huh?
I looked the same enough that she recognized me.
You want mailing address?
Huh?
You want
Mailing address, yes. Thank y'all. Anyway, so tonight is Rosh Chodesh Tevet, the tribe of Dan. We're going to talk about the ending of Hanukkah, and I don't know what else yet, but that's tonight, 6 o'clock, family meal. Looks like we're having Salisbury steak, and we're having a turkey soup, and I'll probably grab a salad somewhere, although I don't know, is the romaine lettuce out yet again?
There's lettuce.
It's tonight.
But anyway, so there should be plenty of food.
Yep.
And what other announcements do we have? We don't really. We have Wednesday night, we have the
Back at the church again.
Bible study. Okay, it's studying the book of Revelation, and it will be at the church.
Do I bring something?
I think that's about it for right now, right?
Tammy's classes?
Tammy's class. Tammy is doing a discipleship training class with her ministry, For His Glory, Apostolic Ministries. And yes,
Should I cook something and bring something?
you can.
Okay.
Absolutely. Happy to have it.
Coming tonight?
Can I bring 2 boys if I have Robbie and his friend?
Absolutely.
You bring a whole car full.
You can bring a whole car full. We don't care.
You can bring some
We're
girls
fine
too
with it.
if you want.
Boys can come.
We'll even sit them at a
Just
back
no
table and
girls.
give them dreidels.
Yay! I'll make one of my fancy pasta.
That'd be great. Anyway, Tammy's doing a discipleship class. Do you know what the subject is tomorrow?
Tomorrow is the prophet, Daryl's teaching.
The prophet. Daryl's teaching. Oh, I'm gonna come. Oh, I can't come. I'm singing at OIT
Steak.
tomorrow afternoon.
Oh, it's tomorrow.
Sausage.
What time?
What time?
Hamburger. But not
What
sausage.
time?
4.
What time will it be over?
About 6.
Usually 6.
Yeah.
And I'm supposed to be singing up at OIT between 4 and 6 with Klamath Corral, and I get a free prime rib dinner if I do that.
Go do that.
So I might be doing that, although I would really like to hear Daryl's teaching on the office of the prophet. That should be fun. Yes, it should
Yes,
be
it
fun.
be. There should be lots of fun.
And if I'm not there to argue with him, it might go smoother. All right?
Right.
Anyway, I'm gonna try to make some of those classes, just, you can put it in the box or something, or just, yeah, give it to Craig. Do continue with the tithes and offerings so we can get all the bills paid. We're doing really good. I'm really, really happy with this, with the way things have been going financially with the fellowship. Because because it's amazing, as small as we are, we have the funds to take care of all the bills, and we've had a little extra to send to people like the congregation down in Paradise who lost everything. We sent them some gifts for Hanukkah, and we've got the people that I take my Hebrew classes from have sent out a request, and we're going to be able to send them a special gift. And it's really nice to be able to support other ministries besides our own, which actually is kind of necessary because that's a tithing in itself, you know. So we try to tithe off of what comes in through here as well, and God has blessed, and He blesses, and it's so wonderful. And we're going to, we have one more passage that for someone to sign up to read, I think. And like I said, my voice is a little rough this morning. Probably coffee's not helping. But there is hot water over there if someone wants to have tea or coffee to sit at the table with. And I'm not going to do this song because I'm not ready to do this song. So what are we starting with, Janie?
Matovu.
Matovu. You like starting with Matovu.
I like starting with Matovu.
It gets us warmed up slowly, huh?
Yep.
Is that the one you want me to try?
You can do
Because I
Matovu.
know I'm probably gonna have to do one, because
Well, she'll do Blessed Are You.
she will, okay, I'll
Probably.
read that one.
And
'cause I
the
know
other
that
thing
one.
about Matovu that probably most of you don't know, this is a prayer that is traditionally recited as people come into the sanctuary for prayer time in the Jewish synagogues. It started as I love the story behind this. This was the false prophet trying to set judgment over Israel, and God made him say a blessing instead. is one day. I can find it there.
There is one
delight in your Shabbat. What I'm hearing, so that's what we're going to do, right?
Is that it? I can't see it at all.
That's it.
You make it bigger?
Nope.
Or not?
It fills the page. I could make it bigger, but then we can't scroll on it. But I can't scroll up to the top.
Let's just make it bigger when we get to the middle.
Yeah.
Our King,
Adonai, we delight in your Shabbat. We enter your rest and your praises we sing. Adonai, we delight in your Shabbat. We delight, we delight, we delight, we delight in your Shabbat. We delight, we delight, we delight, we delight in your Shabbat.
Okay, repeat after me the words Adonai, we delight in your Shabbat. Adonai, we delight in your Shabbat. Okay, when I get to that line, you repeat that line, right? If you can't see the rest of the words, you can do that one. In 6 days you painted the face of the earth. Adonai, we delight in your Shabbat. You carved out the day when you rest from the work. Adonai, we delight in your Shabbat. You brought forth the nation from Abraham. Adonai, we delight in your Shabbat. Spare the sacrifice of providing the ram. Adonai, we delight in your Shabbat. We delight, we delight, we delight, we delight in your Shabbat. We delight, we delight, we delight, we delight in your Shabbat. The prophets were told that Mashiach would come. Adonai, we delight in your Shabbat. Shema Israel, Yahweh is one. Adonai, we delight in your Shabbat. Just as you rested when your work was done. Adonai, we delight in your Shabbat. We'll enter your rest by the work of your Son. Adonai, we delight in your Shabbat. We delight, we delight, we delight, we delight in your Shabbat. We delight, we delight, we delight, we delight in your Shabbat. The lilies you dress and the sparrows you feed. Adonai, we delight in your Shabbat. You Elohim will provide every need. Adonai, we delight in your Shabbat. Your people will enter your rest when we sing. Adonai, we delight in your Shabbat. Baruch haba Hashem Yahweh. Adonai, we delight in your Shabbat. We delight, we delight, we delight, we delight in your Shabbat. We delight, we delight, we delight, we delight in your Shabbat. We delight, we delight, we delight, we delight in your Shabbat. We delight, we delight, we delight, we delight in your Shabbat. The top. Avinu Malkeinu, you are Father, our King. Adonai, we delight in your Shabbat. We enter your rest and your praises we sing. Adonai, we delight in your Shabbat. Abba Father, we delight in this day that you have set aside for you. And we glorify your name, and we ask that as we gather together today, as we worship you, as we hear your word, Father, as all of this is part of our worship to you, that you will be honored, that you will be glorified, that Yeshua will be lifted up, because he said, if I be lifted up, I will draw all men unto me. So, Father God, we lift up Yeshua, Jesus, your Son, and we lift him up to your glory, to your honor. And Father, I ask you will receive our worship with joy. In the name of Yeshua, in the name of Jesus. Amen. Stand for the reading of the Shema. And this, we do have programs in the pews, though.
I guess this should say it, huh? My Bible's all in big print and your guys is just still small.
Huh?
That says how big
It's different, I know. We had someone that left a review of us on Google, which was kind of funny. Said it certainly wasn't what I was expecting. Really different. And I said, yeah, I tell people that all the time. It's not what you expect. It's okay. It's okay. I gotta turn my pages here because I need to get me a new one of these. Things keep opening on me. Sorry, guys. Thing is, about the time we think we've memorized it, we might mess up a word or two. And one of the things that I learned early on is the goal is not to memorize them as much as it is to mean the prayer. To mean the prayer. To get to where you understand it and we can say it with kavana, or with our soul, with our meaning, our heart. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lishmo kol shofar. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctifies us with your commandments and has instructed us to hear the voice of the shofar. Shema Israel, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem Kavod, Malchuto, Le'olam Vayed. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha, V'kol levavecha, V'kol nafshecha, V'kol me'odecha. Ve'hayu hadvarim ha'ele, Asher enoki mitzavcha hayom, al lavavecha. V'shinotam levanecha v'dibarta bam, V'shektecha b'v'necha uv'kolektecha, V'terek U'shaktecha u'nechumecha, U'shaktam le'olot al yadecha, V'hayu etotafot b'nenecha, U'ktavtam al mezuzot b'techa, U'v'sharecha, Ve'ahavta l'reacha kamocha. And in English, let's read it together. Hear Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one.
Blessed be the name of his glorious kingdom forever and ever.
And you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart,
and with all your soul, and with all your might.
And these words that I command you today shall be in your heart.
And you shall teach them diligently to your children, and you shall speak of them when you sit at home, when you walk along the way, when you lie down, and when you rise up. And you shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be for frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates.
And you shall love your neighbor as yourself. ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם אשר קידשנו במצוותיו וציוונו לחיות לגויים ונתן לנו Yeshua HaMashiach for העולם. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who sanctified us with your commandments, and commanded us to be a light unto the nations, and has given us Yeshua the Messiah, the light of the world. And Abba, Father, we thank you for the light that shines forth. We thank you that Yeshua is the light, and that he has made us to be his lights. And Father, I thank you that you have brought us here to shine your light in this community, in this neighborhood, in this town. Lord, I ask right now that you would help us to shine your light with honor. Shine your light in such a way that you receive the glory and you receive the honor. And today I'm going to ask that you would be with Joy as she is leading the kids from her school in a living nativity set where they're going to be singing some songs about you, about Jesus, Lord. And I thank you that you've given her a position, given her a place where she can do that. And I ask that you would give her peace in this, that you would give her strength. Father, that you would heal her body from the illness that she's had this week. And that you would give her favor in the house that she's working in the school that she's teaching in. Father, give her favor and give her strength to stand in her position. And Lord, I know there's lots that goes on behind the scenes in schools. So much politics. Father, I ask that you would give her wisdom as she walks through that. But today, as she is leading her group in songs about Jesus at a public display, Lord, I ask that you would give her the grace to share about you in a way that reaches people. Lord, I thank you for this time and this season, that even as we shine the lights of Hanukkah, there are lights all around us that are shining for Christmas. Lights all around us that are shining to declare the birth of Messiah. And even though we know he was not born at Christmas, we know that he was born at a different time of the year, we also know he was not born to stay in a manger, but he was born to grow, to be the prophet, to be the coming one of God, to be Mashiach, to die, and to be resurrected. And I thank you that in this season, we can all declare who Jesus is and have it be accepted, have it be heard in ways that at other times of the year we maybe can't. So Lord, I ask that that message would be sent out. Lord, this is a time when many, many, many people turn their eyes and their hearts to you. So I ask that there would be a harvest of souls for your kingdom in this season. And I thank you because I believe that you're going to do that. I believe that you will do that. In the name of Yeshua HaMashiach, our Lord and our Savior. Amen. Let's do Light of the World. I never know what songs I'm going to do. But they come to me, so. Let's provide what's in this book. Did I do steal it for the other? There it is. Light of the World.
Beauty
that for every step you were with us, kneeling on this battleground to see how much you've done, knowing every victory is your power in us. Scars and struggles on the way, but with joy our hearts can say, yes, our hearts can say. Never once did we walk alone. Never once did you leave us on our own. You are faithful, God, you are faithful. Standing on this mountaintop, looking just how far we've come, knowing that for every step you were with us, kneeling on this battleground to see just how much you've done, knowing every victory is your power in us. Scars and struggles on the way, but with joy our hearts can say, yes, our hearts can say. Never once did we ever walk alone. Never once did you leave us on our mean, that's kind of a good theme song for this week's Torah portions.
Wanted to sing along, you know, shouldn't it be cleaned that way so they can sing?
Huh?
You can't.
Floor's moving? There's one more to read, to sign up to read from if someone wants to in the Torah portions. It's on the table there. We're going to be beginning in the Torah portion. It's called Miketz, which means at the end. And I don't have the if you would bring the list up to me, thank you, then I can call you up. You can, now, here's the thing. The way we're situated right now, if you want to read from your passage where you're at, in your version, that's okay. Just stand up and read it loud so we can all hear it. So right now, turn to Genesis chapter 41. We're going to start there. Genesis chapter 41. The name of the portion is Miketz, which means at the end, or in the end. So there's this place where we're going to be looking at the story kind of backwards today when I talk about it. Genesis 41 verses 1 through 16. And I'm going to read the first portion. And I'm reading from the Tree of Life version, which is a kind of a simplified version. It's a nice version. I like it. So if it doesn't have the exact same words that your version has, that's okay. Just listen to it and hear the story, because we need to want to follow the storyline today. Genesis 41. Now at the end of 2 whole years, Pharaoh was dreaming, and behold, there he was standing by the Nile. Then behold, there were 7 cows, good-looking and beefy, and they grazed in the reeds. Then behold, there were 7 other cows coming up after them from the Nile, ugly, emaciated, and they stood beside the cows at the edge of the Nile. Then the ugly, emaciated cows ate the 7 good-looking, beefy cows, and Pharaoh woke up. Then he slept and dreamed a second time. Behold, there were 7 ears of corn coming up on one stalk, plump and good. Then behold, there were 7 ears of corn thin and scorched by the east wind, sprouting up after them. Then the 7 thin ears of corn swallowed up the 7 plump and full ears of corn. And Pharaoh woke up. It was a dream. But in the morning he was disturbed in his spirit. So he sent and he called for the fortune-telling priests of Egypt and all of its wise men. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but no one could interpret them for Pharaoh. Then the chief of the cupbearers spoke with Pharaoh, saying, I am reminded of my sin today. Pharaoh had been angry with his servants and put me in the custody of the house of the commander of the bodyguards, me and the chief of the bakers. Then we each dreamed a dream on the same night, he and I. We both dreamed, yet each dream had its own interpretation. Now there with us was a Hebrew youth, a slave belonging to the commander of the bodyguards. When we told him, he interpreted our dreams for us. Each man's dream he interpreted. Then it came about just as he interpreted it for us. So it happened. Me he restored to my position, but him was hung. Then Pharaoh sent and called for Joseph, and they quickly fetched him from the pit. He shaved, changed his clothes, and came to Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I dreamed a dream, and there is no one to interpret it. I heard about you. It said that you can listen to a dream and interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not within me. God will answer with peace for Pharaoh. Joseph is going to read Genesis 41, verses 25 through 40. And if you want to read from there, you're welcome to. Just read loud enough for us to hear. Genesis 41, 25 through 40.
Now Joseph said to Pharaoh, Pharaoh's dreams are one and the same. God has told to Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years, and the 7 good years are 7 years. And the dreams are one and the same. The 7 lean and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 thin ears scorched by the east wind will be 7 years of famine. It is as I have spoken to Pharaoh. God has shown to Pharaoh that what he is about to do. Behold, 7 years of great abundance are coming in all the land of Egypt. And after this, then 7 years of famine will come, and all the abundance will be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine will ravage the land. So the abundance will be unknown in the land because of the subsequent famine, for it will be very severe. Now as for the repeating of the dream to Pharaoh twice, it means that the matter is determined by God, and God will quickly bring it about. Now let Pharaoh look for a man discerning and wise, and set him over the land of Egypt. Let Pharaoh take action to appoint overseers in charge of the land, and let him exact a fifth of the produce of the land of Egypt in the 7 years of abundance. Then let them gather all the food of these good years that are coming, and store up the grain for food in the cities under Pharaoh's authority, and let them guard it. Let the food become as a reserve for the land for the 7 years of famine which will occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land will not perish during the famine. Now the proposal seemed good to Pharaoh and to all his servants. Then Pharaoh said to his servants, "Can we find a man like this, in whom is a divine spirit?" So Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has informed you of all this, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be over my house, and according to your command, all my people shall do homage. Only in the throne will I be greater than you."
We're going to skip ahead to Genesis 42, verses 1 through 28. Chris, would you read those for us, please?
Then Jacob learned that there was grain in Egypt. He said to his sons, "Why do you keep looking at one another? I have heard," he said, "that there is grain in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die." So 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. But Jacob did not send Joseph's brother Benjamin with his brothers, for he feared that harm might come to him. Thus the sons of Israel were among the other people who came to buy grain, for the famine had reached the land of Canaan. Now Joseph was governor over the land. It was he who sold to all the people of the land. And Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground. Then Joseph saw his brothers, he recognized them. But he treated them like strangers and spoke harshly to them. "Where do you come from?" he said. They said, "From the land of Canaan to buy food." Although Joseph had recognized his brothers, they did not recognize him. Joseph also remembered the dreams that he had dreamed about them. He said to them, "You are spies. You have come to see the nakedness of the land." They said to him, "No, my lord. Your servants have come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. We are honest men. Your servants have never been spies." But he said to them, "No, you have come to see the nakedness of the land." They said, "We, your servants, are 12 brothers, the sons of a certain man in the land of Canaan. The youngest, however, is now with our father, and one is no more." But Joseph said to them, "It is just as I have said to you. You are spies. Here is how you shall be tested. As Pharaoh lives, you shall not leave this place unless your younger brother comes here. Let one of you go and bring your brother, while the rest of you remain in prison, in order that your words may be tested, whether there is truth in you. Or else, as Pharaoh lives, surely you are spies." And he put them all together in prison for 3 days. On the 3rd day, Joseph said to them, "Do this, and you will live, for I fear God. If you are honest men, let one of your brothers stay here, and here where you are imprisoned. The rest of you shall go and carry grain for the famine of your households. and bring your youngest brother to me. Thus your words will be verified, and you shall not die. And they agreed to do so. They said to one another, Alas, we are paying the penalty for what we did to our brother. We saw his anguish when he pleaded with us, but we would not listen. That is why this anguish has come upon us. Then Reuben answered them, Did I not tell you not to wrong the boy? But you would not listen. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood. They did not know that Joseph understood them, since he spoke with them through an interpreter. He turned away from them and wept, and he returned and spoke to them. And he picked out Simon and had him bound before their eyes. Joseph then gave orders to fill their bags with grain, to return every man's money to a sack, and to give them provisions for their journey. This was done for them. They loaded their donkeys with their grain and departed. Then one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at the lodging place, and he saw his money at the top of the sack. He said to his brothers, My money has been put back. Here it is in my sack. At this they lost heart and turned trembling to one another, saying, What is this that God has done to us?
It's quite an intriguing story to me. I've always loved this story. Genesis 43, we're going to skip to 43, verses 15 to 44, verse 17. Craig is going to read that for us. This is when they come back again to Egypt.
So the men took this present, and they took double the money in their hand, and Benjamin. Then they arose and went down to Egypt and stood before Joseph. When Joseph saw Benjamin with him, he said to his house steward, Bring the men into the house, and slay an animal, and make ready, for the men are to dine with me at noon. So the man did as Joseph said, and brought the men to Joseph's house. Now the men were terrified, because they were brought to Joseph's house, and they said, It is because of the money that was returned in our sacks the first time that we are being brought in, that he may seek occasion against us, and fall upon us, and take us for slaves with our donkeys. So they came near to Joseph's house steward, and spoke to him at the entrance of the house, and said, O my lord, we indeed came down the first time to buy food, and it came about, when we came to the lodging place, that we opened our sacks, and behold, each man's money was in the mouth of his sack, our money in full. So we have brought it back in our hand. We have also brought down other money in our hand to buy food. We do not know who put our money in our sacks. He said, Be at ease, do not be afraid. Your God and the God of your father has given you treasure in your sacks. I had your money. Then he brought Simeon out to them. Then the man brought the men into Joseph's house and gave them water, and they washed their feet, and he gave their donkeys fodder. So they prepared the present for Joseph's coming at noon. For they had heard that they were to eat a meal there. When Joseph came home, they brought into the house to him the present which was in their hand, and bowed to the ground before him. Then he asked them about their welfare, and said, Is your old father well, of whom you spoke? Is he still alive? They said, Your servant, our father, is well, and he is still alive. They bowed down in homage. As he lifted his eyes and saw his brother Benjamin, his mother's son, he said, Is this your youngest brother, of whom you spoke to me? And he said, May God be gracious to you, my son. Joseph hurried out, for he was deeply stirred over his brother, and he sought a place to weep. And he entered his chamber and wept there. Then he washed his face and came out, and he controlled himself and said, Serve the meal. So they served him by himself, and them by themselves, and the Egyptians who ate with him by themselves, because the Egyptians could not eat bread with the Hebrews, for that is loathsome to the Egyptians. Now they were seated before him, the firstborn according to his birthright, and the youngest according to his youth, and the men looked at one another in astonishment. He took portions to them from his own table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. So they feasted and drank freely with him. Then he commanded his house steward, saying, Fill the men's sacks with food, as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the mouth of his sack. Put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest, and his money for the grain. And he did as Joseph told him. As soon as it was light, the men were sent away, they with their donkeys. They had just gone out of the city, and were not far off, when Joseph said to his house steward, Up, follow the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, Why have you repaid evil for good? Is not this one from which my Lord drinks, which he indeed uses for divination? You have done wrong in this. So he overtook them and spoke these words to them. They said to him, Why does my Lord speak such words as these? Far be it from your servants to do such a thing. Behold, the money which we found in the mouths of our sacks we have brought back to you from the land of Canaan. How then could we steal silver or gold from your Lord's house? With whomever of your servants it is found, let him die, and we also will be my Lord's slaves. So he said, Now let it be so according to your words. He with whom it is found shall be my slave, and the rest of you shall be innocent. Then they hurried, each man lowered his sack to the ground, and each man opened his sack. He searched, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest, and the cup was found in Benjamin's sack. Then they tore their clothes, and when each man loaded his donkey, they returned to the city. When Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, he was still there, and they fell to the ground before him. Joseph said to them, What is this deed that you have done? Do you not know that such a man as I can indeed practice divination? So Judah said, What can we say to my Lord? What can we speak? And how can we justify ourselves? God has found out the iniquity of your servants. Behold, we are my Lord's slaves, both we and the one in whose possession the cup has been found. But he said, Far be it from me to do this. The man in whose possession the cup has been found, he shall be my slave. But as for you, go up in peace to your father.
Janie's going to read out of the prophet's story, the prophet's reading. It's in Zechariah, chapter 2. It starts in verse 10 for most Bibles, and in the Jewish Bible it starts in verse 14. It starts with the word sing and rejoice, O daughter of Zion. So it's Zechariah 2:10 through 3:10. Janie?
Sing and rejoice, O daughter of Zion, for behold, I am coming, and I will live among you. It is a declaration of Adonai. In that day many nations will join themselves to Adonai, and they will be my people, and I will dwell among you. Then you will know that Adonai Zevaot has sent me to you. Adonai will inherit Judah as his portion in the Holy Land, and will once again choose Jerusalem. Be silent before Adonai, all flesh, for he has aroused himself from his holy dwelling. Then he showed me Joshua the Kohen Gadol, standing before the angel of Adonai, and the Satan standing at his right hand to accuse him. Adonai said to the Satan, Adonai rebukes you, the Satan. Indeed, Adonai, who has chosen Jerusalem, rebukes you. Is not this man a brand plucked out of the fire? Now Joshua was wearing filthy garments, and standing before the angel, who answered and spoke to those standing before him, saying, Remove the filthy garments from him. Then to Joshua he said, See, I have removed your iniquity from you, and will dress you with fine clothing. Then I said, Place a clean turban on his head. So they put a pure turban on his head, and clothed him with garments, while the angel of Adonai stood by. The angel of Adonai exhorted Joshua, saying, Thus says Adonai Zevaot, If you will walk in my ways, and keep my charge, then you will judge my house, and watch over my courts, and I will give you a place to walk among these standing here. Listen well, Joshua Kohen Gadol, both you and your companions seated before you, because they are men who are a sign. Behold, I will bring forth my servant the branch. For behold, the stone I have laid before Joshua is one stone with 7 facets. On it I will engrave an inscription, declares Adonai Zevaot, that I will remove the iniquity of this land in one day. In that day, declares Adonai Zevaot, every man will invite his neighbor to sit under the vine and under the fig tree.
Out of the apostolic writings, the book of Luke. We have again a part of a story, Luke 24:13 through 29, and Bob is going to read that for us. Luke 24:13 through 29.
On that same day, 2 of Jesus' followers were going to the village named Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. And they were talking to each other about the things that had happened. As they talked and discussed, Jesus himself drew near and walked along with them. They saw him, but somehow did not recognize him. Jesus said to them, "What are you talking about to each other as you walk along?" They stood still with sad faces. One of them, named Cleopas, asked him, "Are you the only visitor in Jerusalem who doesn't know the things that have been happening these last few days?" "What things?" he asked. "The things that happened to Jesus of Nazareth," they answered. "This man was a prophet and was considered by God and by all the people to be powerful in everything he said and did. Our chief priests and rulers handed him over to be sentenced to death, and he was crucified. He had hoped that he would be the one who was going to set Israel free. Besides all that, this is now the 3rd day since it happened. Some of the women of our group surprised us and went at dawn to the tomb, but could not find his body. They came back saying they had seen a vision of angels who told them that he is alive. Some of our group went to the tomb and found it exactly as the woman had said, but they did not see him. Then Jesus said to them, "How foolish you are, how slow you are to believe everything that the prophet said. Was it not necessary for the Messiah to suffer these things and then to enter his glory?" And Jesus explained to them what was said about himself in all the scriptures, beginning with the book of Moses and the writings of all the prophets. As they came near the village to which they were going, Jesus acted as if he were going farther, but they held him back, saying, "Stay with us. The day is almost over, and it is getting dark." So we went in to stay with them.
So blessed be your name.
And I can see this one.
Blessed be your name in a land that is plentiful.
Blessed be the name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. You give and take away. You give and take away. My heart will choose to say, blessed be your name. You give and take away. You give and take away. My heart will choose to say, blessed be your name. Every blessing you pour out, turn back to praise. When the darkness closes in, still I will sing. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your glorious name. Blessed be your name. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be your name. I lost it. Blessed be your name. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Blessed be the
Why am I not playing the song I want? It's the wrong song.
Okay, well, this isn't the song I was thinking of, but I keep hearing these words, praises rise. So I guess we're gonna do a song that we don't do very often. Make up your own thing, don't try to do Tammy's.
I can't, I'm so sorry to have to.
Oh, it's called Praises Rise. And it's, yeah, I think we have it. My voice is the sound of 1,000 bells. Hear me, nations, hear Israel. My song is the one that hears us well. an interesting storyline we're following today, right? We've got this whole story of Joseph, and some of us know his story. Some of us, I mean, I learned this story when I was a wee little kid, you know. Here's this son of Jacob. He grows up, he has these dreams. He tells his brothers about these wonderful dreams where everybody's going to bow to him. Brothers get upset, wouldn't you? You know, basically Joseph is looking at his older brothers and saying, I'm better than you, right? That's kind of what they interpret it as. So they throw him in a pit, sell him off as a slave. He ends up in Egypt. God raises him up. He starts doing good, and he gets accused of something he never did. Once again, he gets thrown in a pit. He's in prison in Egypt. He's stuck there. And while he's there, he's raised up to leadership, even in prison. And he interprets dreams for a couple guys. And he says to the one who's going to be rescued, the one who gets the positive dream, he says, now, don't forget about me. I want you to speak to Pharaoh on my behalf. Get me out of here. Right? In other words, get me out of here. I don't like it here either. So speak to Pharaoh. And we left off last week where it says, and the guy forgot about him. Wonderful, isn't it? So here we have poor Joseph. Still in prison. On something he didn't do. Sold off by the brothers. His father thinks he's dead. He's stuck in prison in Egypt. And our reading today begins with, at the end. At the end. When 2 full years were over. 2 more years he languished in that prison, right? 2 more years. It's a long time to be stuck in prison, isn't it? Sometimes those of us that are older look at 2 years and go, that's nothing. But when you're young, that's a long time. And even sometimes as you're older, that becomes a long time. 2 years. And then Pharaoh has a dream that he can't interpret. And Joseph is brought up out of prison. He interprets the dream to Pharaoh. And he gets set up in charge over a welfare program, basically, to save people's lives. To come to this place where during the 7 good years, he's going to be putting things away. Because you know how we are. We don't save very easily on our own. Most of us. Some of us are good at it, but most of us don't. And they could have just told the people, you know, there's going to be 7 good years and 7 bad years, so put money away. But no, they didn't do that. They took care of it as a government. And Joseph gets put in charge of the program. He's raised up. Why? He is now second in command only to Pharaoh. So now that he's in this position, I have a question. Why didn't he send word to his dad that he was alive? He's in a good place now. He's second in command to Pharaoh. He could have sent somebody to his dad to say, hey, look, I'm here. I'm in Egypt. Come.
Maybe he didn't want his brothers to know?
He didn't do it. Why not? Okay, I'm going to tell you something. Have you ever watched a movie and you kind of know the storyline, and you're watching the movie and you hear the music start and you hear the suspense build in the music and in all this stuff, and this person that you're watching in this movie gets ready to open a door, and everything in you's wanting to scream, don't open that door, because you know something's on the other side of it that's not good, right? Why? Because you're not in the movie. You're hearing something that character's not hearing. When we read the Torah, we are outside of the story. We're reading from a perspective that we know a lot of things that the people in the stories don't know. Why, we even know the name of the book, right? So, I mean, if you're reading a book about the ghost of the mansion, and that's the name of the book, and you have someone look at this mansion and go, oh, I need to stay here. I'm going to go in there. What are you thinking to yourself? There's a ghost in there. Don't go in there, you idiot, right? We know something they don't know. As we read this, we know something Joseph doesn't know. We know that his father thinks he's dead. Joseph doesn't know that. Joseph knows that Joseph knows that he interpreted a dream to his dad and his brothers. And they all got upset with him, including his dad. His dad was upset with him too. Then Joseph knows that his dad sent him to his brothers. For all he knows, his dad wanted to get rid of him too. He doesn't know, does he? He got sold off. He's gone. He has no clue that what his brothers did was take the coat, dip it in blood, and take it to the dad and say, look, the animals must have got him, you know. He doesn't know his dad thinks he's dead. All he knows is he got sold off and nobody came looking for him. That's what he knows. The brothers have no idea he's still alive. They know they sold him as a slave. The life expectancy of a slave going down to Egypt is not very good. They have no idea he's still alive. They don't know the end from the beginning, do they? We do. We've read it. We know the story. We understand it. We know that Joseph knows who those guys are that come in, right? They don't know that. Joseph doesn't know if they're the same or if they've changed. He doesn't have a clue if his dad's alive. He doesn't know that stuff, so he sets up this pattern to find out, right? And in doing so, he puts the brothers in kind of an uncomfortable position. They don't know what's happening. They've got money returned to them that shouldn't have been. They're being told that when you come back, you have to do this, or you will be arrested. They have no idea that this man is their brother. Why not? Why didn't they recognize Joseph? What?
He looks like an Egyptian.
He looked like an Egyptian. Absolutely. He wore the haircut. He did the hair. He looked every part like an Egyptian. Not like them at all.
He wasn't a boy anymore, he's older.
He wasn't a boy anymore. This is a while later. Mm-hmm. He's not a little boy. He's not 18 anymore. He's dressed like an Egyptian. He's got his hair cut like an Egyptian. He's got his face shaved like an Egyptian would.
Maybe even makeup on.
Huh?
Maybe even makeup on.
Possibly even makeup on, because a lot of them did. A lot of the men did wear makeup. It's interesting when you look at the history of it. He looked and talked like an Egyptian. They didn't know who he was. He spoke to them through an interpreter, so they had no clue he understood them. There's a lot we know that they don't know. There's a lot we know from Joseph's perspective, too, that he doesn't know. He doesn't know that his father mourned for him. He doesn't know that his father was grieving this whole time. He doesn't know until the brothers say, and there is one that is no more, that they all think he's dead. That's why there was nothing sent for him. That's why nobody came to rescue him. Dad thought he was dead. He was dead. When we read in the Gospel of Luke, we have these men walking along the road, right? And it's after the crucifixion of Jesus. It's 3 days later. They were two of his disciples. They had been with him. They had followed him. And now he's dead. And they're walking. And someone comes alongside them and starts engaging them in conversation. Now my version says that their eyes were closed so they could not know who he was. Their eyes were kept from recognizing him. God, for whatever purpose, he comes up. This is Jesus now. They just spent 3 years with him. He's walking next to him and he's talking to them and they don't recognize him. They don't know what this person is. And this person talking to them says, why are you guys so upset? What are you talking about? Why are you sad? What's so terrible that happened that you're talking about it? And they're like, where have you been? The whole city knows about this. The whole country's going to know about it soon. This Jesus, this prophet who did all these wonderful things. Our leaders decided that he was a threat to them, and they had him killed. He's dead. We thought he was going to deliver us from the Romans. Did you catch that? That's what they thought. They weren't looking for a suffering Messiah. They were looking for one who would redeem Israel, throw off the oppression, set up the kingdom again. That's what they wanted. And that's what they were looking for. And that's exactly what the priests, the high priest and the leadership were afraid of. Why? Because they'd been there before. They had a peace arrangement with Rome. They were actually treated better than some other countries that Rome had conquered. They had a peace arrangement. Why? Because they had invited Rome in to help them keep the Greeks away. You know, the whole story of the Maccabees that had happened a couple hundred years before. The Maccabees had raised up and they'd thrown off the rule of the Greeks, but they couldn't maintain it. They couldn't maintain that freedom. And the Greeks kept coming back to reconquer this land they had lost. They had land wars going on, kind of like we had land wars with Mexico for a while. I mean, all of California used to belong to Mexico, right? It actually did.
And then some.
Huh?
California and then some.
Yeah, and then some. Lots of land that we got into this war with them and we gained this property. Well, imagine Mexico coming and trying to take it back a couple hundred years later. Maybe we don't have to imagine that so much. But anyway, it's a whole nother topic. But there's this place of they're looking at being ruled by someone else, because what they did when they saw the Greeks kept coming back, they reached out and got the Romans to help them to throw off the Greek armies. So they had made arrangements with Rome. The leadership had. They had an agreement. Early in the United States history, we had problems with England, and we called in the French to help us. Did you know that? Yeah, and the French helped us in this war, in our battle for independence. Well, then we had to fight the French, because they thought, well, we helped you, we should be able to rule part of it, right? It's the same kind of concept, the same politics going on. And the disciples of Jesus' day was hoping. They were hoping against hope. They were looking for the one who was going to say, go away, Greeks, go away, Rome. We are our own nation. We have our own king, and could hold it. That's what they were looking for. A new king. Jesus came and he did all these miracles, these wonderful things, and it was fulfilling a lot of the prophecies of the Messiah that was to come. And so they were looking for him to throw off Rome, and what happened? He died. He got killed. And these men are walking along the road, and they are sad, and they are grieving, and now they're trying to explain to this stranger what happened, because he seems to not know. And then this stranger says, you men of little faith, didn't you get it? Don't you understand? And it says he began with Moses. Those are the books we read from. The first 5 books. He began with the writings of Moses, went in through the prophets, and he showed them the pictures of the Messiah that was coming. One of the pictures I'm sure he showed them was this Joseph story, where Joseph was sold and he was enslaved, and he was there and nobody recognized him. Here he is, the king, practically, of Egypt, and his brothers don't even know who he is. Same thing with Messiah. He came, his brothers didn't know who he was, did they? They didn't recognize him. They had no clue. It's interesting because our stories today end there. That's not a good place to end a story, is it? It's not the fun place to end a story. Even in our reading out of Zechariah where the prophet speaks and he says, and he shows him the high priest and he shows him, he says, now take off the dirty clothes, put on the clean clothes. And he says, now this is what I am going to do in the future. Okay? In the future, I am going to bring my high priest, the branch he talks about. In the future, I'm going to set up my kingdom. In the future, I'm going to cleanse you of your sins. In the future, was it there yet? No. Did the prophet even understand it all? We find out later he doesn't. Because God shows him something else, and the angel asks him, so do you know what that... And he asks the angel, what is this? And the angel goes, don't you know? Aren't you getting this? Don't you understand it? And the prophet says, no, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't know what this is. I'm confused. There's a whole lot of stuff coming at me real fast. God's making all these promises, but I don't even understand them. And then it says, this is the word of God. It won't be by your strength. Will not be by might. Will not be by power. It's not going to be by your wisdom. It's not going to be by what you do. But by my Spirit, I will do what I have said I will do. By my Spirit. You know, sitting back looking at all of this, we can look at this story and we can go, oh, don't worry, guys. It's just your brother. He's just testing you, right? Don't worry, guys. It's just Jesus. He's teaching you. It's Jesus. He's not dead. He's alive. We know it because we're out here looking in at the story. Just like watching a movie. We went and saw The Princess Bride last night at the theater. It was great. It was fun.
It's a new one?
Huh?
A new one?
No, it's the old one.
Oh.
But in a big screen at the Ross Raglan,
Oh.
surround sound, all these people with us. And it's really interesting, even watching a movie we've watched several times. I love that movie. Always have. But even then, when something happens and you can feel it coming and you feel it coming and you feel it coming, and everyone wants to say, don't do that, right? Don't. And she steps and she goes into the quicksand. Everybody in the audience went, oh! It was funny. We know, because we've seen the movie, almost everybody there had seen the movie before, that Wesley's going to dive in and he's going to pull her out and it's going to be okay. We know that. But we still did this big, huge corporate, you know. It was startling. We know the story. The characters in the story don't know it. They're playing it out. Do you know, it's kind of interesting when I think about this. God knows your story. He knows your story. The Bible tells us that he knows before you're even born who you're going to be. He knows your story. He knows beginning to end of your story, of your life. He knows every part of it. He knows it. So he's in a position we are not in, right? He sees it all. We're in a position of, I'm in the fire swamp. I just fell into the sand. I'm going to die, right? We're in the position the Buttercup in the movie is in where Wesley's gone away and she's been told he's dead. So she's very sad. We're in that position. We all know that he was alive. We all knew he was coming back. We all know that part of the story. We all know this story here that Joseph is going to reveal who he is. Everything's going to be okay. They don't know that. They don't know that. The prophet Zechariah is in the middle of a rebuilding of the temple. Not everybody's happy about it. There's all this stuff coming against him. He's concerned. He's worried about it. He's been praying about it. God, what are you going to do? And God says, I'm going to take care of it. But he's still in the middle of it. He's still in the middle of it. He still doesn't know. We're in the middle of it, guys. We don't know. But God does. God does. Not only that, but God has made some promises. And one of my all-time favorite passages the book of Romans, chapter 8, and I didn't mark it because I know I can find it so easily. Romans 8:28 says this. Now we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, who are called according to his purpose. For those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son, so that we might be the firstborn among many brothers and sisters. Those who he predestined, he called. Those who he called, he justified. And those who he justified, he also glorified. And that's all written past tense. Am I standing here glorified yet? I don't think so. I'm not there yet. But it's written as if I already am. Am I fully justified? Is everything I do right? No, I make mistakes. But God says I'm justified. God says, I know you. I know the beginning from the end. And it's going to be okay. And whatever place you're at in the story, wherever you're at, whether you're at the place of not knowing that the one you love is alive, or whether you're at the place where you feel like you've just fallen into the quicksand, or whether you feel like you're at the place where you're stuck in the prison, or whether you're in a place where you feel like you're in trouble because you're going to get arrested, or whatever. You don't know. Everything you've hoped and longed and wanted for the last 3 years has been taken from you suddenly. That's what these disciples felt like walking on the road. Everything they've worked for 3 years was gone. All of it. And there they are, talking to the answer, not even knowing he's walking with them. The brothers, Joseph's brothers, are talking to the answer, and they don't even know that that's him. The good thing about the prophet in Zechariah, at least he knows he's talking to God. We may be in a place where we don't have a clue what's happening. We don't know what's going on. But God does. God does. And because he knows from the end, he can make sure that it all works out to where we are glorified. Not just him. He's glorified too. But he is going to see to it that we are glorified. Whether we feel like it or not. Whether we recognize it or not. He's going to do that. It's his story that he's writing in us today. Wherever you're at in your story, what I want you to know is God knows where you're at. God knows that point, and he knows the end. And he's got it planned. And you can relax in it. Now, sometimes it doesn't feel like that, right? Sometimes it feels pretty hard. But we know who's in charge. And because we know who's in charge, when we get worried, when we get scared, when we get upset, we can go back to that verse in Romans and say, but God works all things together for good. For my good. For your good. God says he will work all things together for good. Do I understand it? No. Does it feel like it? Not always. God says, I will work all things together for good. For good. For our good. Our benefit. Our glorification. Not just his. Although honestly, it's enough if it is just his. But it won't be. It's ours too. Because we belong to him. And because he loves us. And because he cares. Next week, we're going to hear one of my favorite parts of Scripture where Joseph looks at his brothers and he says, I know you guys meant that for bad, but God meant it for good.
The devil meant for evil.
We'll get there in our lives. We may not be there right now, but we'll get there. We'll get there. The story will be finished. And it will be good. Father, I ask that you would help us understand and trust you where we are. Trust you where we are in the big hole, in the big unknown. Trust you. And keep doing what you want us to do because we know that we can trust you. And I thank you, Father. I thank you for all you're doing that we don't understand, but all that you are doing to bring yourself glory, but to bring us glory too. And to bring us to a place of joy before you. And I thank you for that. In the name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen and amen. That's, it's a simple message, but that's what God kept showing me this week. It's what he kept showing me. And I think it's a great idea, great thought, and good to remember, especially when in the middle of it. Hey God, you know the rest of the story. Now if you would just play a soundtrack for me so I could know where I'm at. Right? They do that in the movies. It would be really nice if I could just... Was it the cartoon that I saw Calvin and Hobbes talking to each other and Calvin and Hobbes and Calvin says, I don't know if... I feel like sometimes this is a great big play and everybody's doing their lines ad lib and I don't even know if this is a tragedy or a farce. And he comes up with, there have to be more dance numbers. There has to be more music. So that we understand and it doesn't end up being a tragedy, right? God's promised our story is not a tragedy. And it's not a farce. It's more like a romantic comedy. And he is the one we love. And it will work out. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. And be gracious unto you. The Lord lift up his countenance on you and give you peace. Shabbat shalom, shalom aleichem. Come back tonight, 6 o'clock for a family meal. Bring something to share if you can. If not, don't worry about it. Just come.
Okay.
Da,